What is up? What is going on? This is Arvin Ramakrishna. Welcome to Driven to Draw. This is podcast episode number 13. We've got Martijn van de Wiel, who is an industrial designer, and he's got a very impressive Facebook page. It is Design Sketching. He's got over 1.5 million likes, actually. I'm sorry, not likes, but subscribers on Facebook, which also kind of reinforces the importance of industrial design and how many people are really interested in product design. Martijn is an industrial designer, a product designer, and we are going to be discussing a lot of things with Martijn, including his background, as well as some of the projects that he's involved in, and it's going to be really pretty cool. On a side note, I do want to mention why I've been out of kind of missing in action, MIA. So, where do I start? Things have been just ridiculously crazy since I've been trying to get my academy up and running, and it's going to be taking much longer than I anticipated. But just so you all know, industrial designers like myself, who's kind of a hybrid between a designer as well as an engineer, because I actually practice both, and as well as developing my artistic skills. And these are all things that I want to pass on to the general public of how important it is to really develop some of these skill sets and these characteristics, and how it really opens up your mind to be able to be a little bit more innovative or think outside the box. Very, very important. So in any case, it's been ridiculously crazy because I've been embarking in trying to look at creating more content and then developing some courses and seeing how I can help other people further with learning more things online and trying to understand what are the most effective ways of teaching people and inspiring people as well. I mean, inspiration is also a very important component because when you go to college and you go to school, you almost have to do it by necessity because you're paying a pretty large tuition to be able to go there and then be held accountable. So we're going to be talking a lot about the education system, where we think it's headed, where is online education headed, and what are the things that have been missing in online education. And it's just going to be really interesting because we'll touch upon things that are already out there that are working, and I'm also on this quest to help people learn things a little bit quicker, a little bit faster, and more effectively. So it's going to be pretty cool. So stay tuned, and let's get started with the interview. We got Martijn on Driven to Draw today. I wanted to extend my gratitude and thanks for having his time to talk about some of the fascinating things he's been working on with design sketching. Martijn is a prolific designer, and he's also a fabulous teacher. And today we're going to be talking about several different topics, and among those is going to be SKETCHDRIVE, which is a tool that many people educators can use to help bring a little bit more, or actually a lot more, engagement between the student and the teacher, and being able to provide feedback for students who are working on improving their sketching ability, drawing ability, design ability, and that sort of thing. And I think it's really fascinating, and I'm really excited about it. And we're going to talk to Martijn about how he thought about this idea, and also just learn a little bit about his background. So once again, Martijn, I want to thank you for coming on the show today.
Thank you, Arvin. It's a pleasure to be here, and a pleasure to meet you.
Absolutely.
Look forward to this chat.
Me too. So I wanted to sort of go back to the beginning. I wanted to really understand a little bit more about your background and just have our audience understand what it is that you do and how you got into industrial design and what were some of your influences when you were growing up. So let's just kind of start with, how did you get started into the field of industrial design?
That's a while back. That was in, let's see, it must have been like 1990, when I was actually almost done with high school and then looking for what's next, and I wasn't quite sure. And then an uncle of mine, he introduced me to a friend of his who is a product designer in the Netherlands. He has one of the big industrial design studios here in the Netherlands. And I had a chance to visit them for a day. And so as I believe 16-year-old, I was hanging out at this studio and seeing all the designers sketch and working on CAD models. And I got super excited about that. And I thought, I feel at home in this atmosphere. And so I started looking for schools that would teach me how to become an industrial designer.
When you were growing up, did you have a lot of fascination for a lot of kids obviously draw when they're young. They get into drawing characters and toys or trying to build things like Legos and so forth. How was your childhood when you were growing up with that kind of interest?
Yeah, I remember drawing a lot, and when I look at pictures from my childhood, I see myself drawing a lot and building stuff. So I was always intrigued and always trying to create stuff. I think what fascinated me most was nature, and I always tried to sketch like animals and plants and my surroundings. But also technology, and I think that was my grandfather introduced me to that. He was a blacksmith, so he was very technical oriented, and he used to draw me these little scenarios, and he had this little pencil, like a little lead pencil, and a piece of paper like the back of an envelope or something, and he would then explain to me how a 4-stroke engine would work or something like that. So he was always telling stories and trying to explain to me how things worked using sketches. So he always said, well, then the first stroke, this happens. And he drew a little sketch, and then the second stroke, and this happens. So, and I guess that was at a very young age, but I guess that really inspired me and gave me a natural sense of that sketching is part of your vocabulary and can be very helpful in explaining something to someone or developing thought.
How old were you when that was taking place, when you had that interaction with your grandfather? Do you remember?
Hard to say. It must be maybe the age of 5, 6. I mean, as long as I can remember, he was always drawing something. So it must have started earlier than that. But like my conscious memory of that starts at around the age of 6, I would say.
Oh, pretty impactful to have those sort of memories kind of stick into your brain for all these years.
The 4-stroke engine really stands out.
Yeah, absolutely. What about your parents? Did they have a pretty big influence in what it is that you wanted to do, or did they ever try to steer you into developing certain skill sets? Did they encourage that part of your drawing and your talent and to kind of develop that form?
Yeah, well, they certainly encouraged it, but they never steered me in that direction. Actually, they're both scientists, so biologist, scientist, and so I guess I'm reluctant to say artistic side, but the more creative side is I guess from my father's side of the family. But I never felt forced in any direction of studies or interest. So I was free to choose and could develop my own interest in that regard.
Do you have siblings?
Yes, I have 2 brothers.
Okay.
Younger brothers.
And are they also into design, or are they kind of gone into more of the mathematical or science field?
One is more in the analytical world, and one is a visualizer. He makes visualizations for architects.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah, so in that sense, very similar to what I do, working with images and trying to craft the best image, but more from a technical, computer-based perspective.
Very good. So once you got into college and you went through the design curriculum, what was your next step? Did you start working for design firms, or did you start to develop some of your own kind of branding? What were the next things that happened after you had graduated and started
Let me see. during my college, I had two opportunities to do an internship, and the first one was in Eindhoven at GBO, a local firm, and the second one was at Design Continuum in Milan. And both those experiences were eye-openers to me.
How so?
Well, I mean, I had seen a design firm when I was 16, so I kind of knew the atmosphere a little bit. But then you go through college and you have all these projects and tests and knowledge that you need to acquire. And so your perception of the design field or the design profession changes. And then I came back to reality and noted that, so this is what I'm studying for. This is what I need to know and develop, and these are the skills that I'm missing or lacking, and I still need to work on very hard. So when I came back from my first internship, I knew exactly what I still had to develop and further develop, and that gave me a huge boost to keep going and to finish my degree. And then my second internship at Design Continuum, it was an international internship, so it was very inspiring in that sense as well. But it also, I met a lot of people from different backgrounds and different design schools, and people that have been in the profession for years, and so that really opened my eyes to different perspectives on the field of industrial design. Some of the people there came from Art Center, Pasadena in Los Angeles. And they were so enthusiastic about what they learned there and the teachers there. And so I decided, let's give that a go, and let's see if I can get in for 1 year after I'm done with my degree in the Netherlands. So that led to a whole series of events that brought me. I did get into Art Center and eventually stayed there for 1 year. Then went back to the Netherlands, landed another job here, and then. But I got infected by the idea that design in the United States was different than in Europe. I really wanted to experience working in the U.S. for a while to understand that and to be part of that culture for a little bit and learn from that. So that's when I started looking for jobs in the States, and I finally landed a job in Chicago at Sundberg Ferar.
Yeah, I know. Yep, we were talking about this earlier.
Yeah.
Sundberg Ferar, yeah.
So that was 2001, or I started in 2000, and then I stayed there for 1 year, and that was fantastic. I was really working as an industrial designer as I had imagined it, and working in a fantastic team with great clients, and that was a huge opportunity for me. Also, I learned a lot about project management because they gave me quite some freedom and control, and I could be in contact with the clients and take the lead in certain projects. And that was really a good experience.
I want to go back to something that you had mentioned before, and I think you did touch on it. You decided to there are two things that you were talking about earlier, and one was the just the sort of the disconnect between school and the professional environment. Mm-hmm. And what did you find that was what did you find was the disconnect, and what do you think that can be improved upon as far as the educational system? At least things may have changed now, because obviously back when we were in school things were different. Mm-hmm. But at that time, because obviously a lot of the things you're doing now and some of the things you're experiencing now with students has helped you to create and work on the project that you are working on right now with SKETCHDRIVE. So I wanted to understand, what were those disconnects? What were those gaps that you felt were there in the educational system that you weren't getting? Was it just the lack of the work experience and being able to apply the knowledge, or is it something else, or was it the sort of teaching that you received? What were some of those disconnects?
Well, first of all, I think it's inevitable that education is always a little bit disconnected from reality or the practice of industrial design, and that's because things are moving so fast, and technology is changing rapidly and giving opportunities, and every year things change. I was talking to one of my friends from actually who I worked with at Sundberg Ferar. I talked to him last week and I asked him how are things in the studio, and he said everything's digital now. They only sketch on Cintiq tablets, and there's hardly any paper sketches anymore in his studio. So that's one thing that changed drastically over the course of just a couple of years. And the other thing is that I think in every school the focus is different, and that's probably a good thing, that a school needs a focus. And in my case, the design school that I come from has a more technical oriented background focus. It's more about the manufacturing and construction of products, and making products that are that actually have it's not just about concepts, but making products that see the light of day. So in the end, like after the concept phase, there is a whole phase of development, and which is crucial for the actual manufacturing and the launch of the product. And if there's a mismatch there, then the product never comes out. So that's a very important part of the curriculum there. But the conceptual development was lacking a little bit, which was one of the reasons for me to sign up for Art Center and develop that.
That was going to be my next question. Yep. Yeah. If that was the reason why you went to Art Center. Let's talk about that too.
Right. But before that, I think the first time I realized that there's a disconnect was at my first internship. And I noted that in university, we were taught this pretty linear system of product development and creativity. And creativity was defined as a set of phases that you went through, and each phase you diverted and then converted again. And it was very mathematical. To me, it felt very mathematical. And I found that in reality, in a design studio, we didn't start by listing a whole list of requirements. We didn't start with a month of research. We just dove into it and developed much more intuitive and iterative. So the process was much more natural than what was taught to me in school, and it felt much more, like I said, natural to
organic,
more organic, right? So that's, I think, the main disconnect. That it was, more in a broader sense, it was more academic or more theoretical. And the reality was more practical.
Great. All right, I wanted to touch again about Art Center, and if you can describe to me what were some of the differences that you did see in the teaching methodology between what you learned in the Netherlands. I know that you said it was very much more linear based and it was technical.
A lot of differences. Don't know where to start actually, because they come from such a different perspective, a different background. Like Art Center, like the name implies, is an art center, and they have photography and film and fine arts, and so it's rooted in the art. and the design profession is one of the expressions of that culture of art. Whereas the design school that I come from in the Netherlands is rooted in technology and in constructing products. So it's like coming from two completely different
perspectives,
right? So in that sense, everything was different. And but I think what struck me most is that at Art Center, I wasn't forced into any methodology. I was free to develop ideas and thoughts and concepts by myself, how I felt it should be done. I could do it very organically, iteratively, as I learned at my internships. I felt really in place there. The sketching was a very natural instrument for me, and that was what most students there used as well. And teachers talked about the sketches. So the discussion was always based around the visuals and the production that you made, and not just about the thinking or the reasoning behind everything, but really about just make something and then contemplate on that and iterate on that and progress. So that felt very different and much more natural to me.
Were you able to bring probably something a little bit different to the table from your experience in Netherlands to Art Center with the other students? You know, I learned a lot of these kind of technical things. This is something you could possibly incorporate into your design. Do you ever have discussions with other students or even the instructors, or were they able to kind of see, wow, you've got this technical ability too that would be a great combination?
Maybe. I also found it a bit of a handicap to come from this technical background and always be thinking about the limitations. And
it's interesting.
It was for me quite a process to liberate myself from thinking in restraints to thinking in possibilities and opportunity. And so I'm sure I must have brought some interesting arguments on the table of, feasibility of products. But in the end, when you're developing concepts, it's more of a limiter than that it really adds something to the conversation. To me, it was the opposite. I learned a lot from them, from my peer students and my teachers there, about thinking freely and like what they call blue sky thinking and conceptual thinking.
How did you go from the blue sky conceptual thinking to narrowing down the feasibility, or did you even get to that stage? Right, because now you've got the blue sky ideas, and to now start to refine those ideas, did you feel like you ended up with a much more creative solution?
You mean in projects that I do now, or?
Right, well, during that process when you're in Art Center, right? Because you said that you were able to change the way you thought, that you were a lot more creative with your first approach without having to think about feasibility from the beginning.
Yeah.
And so how were you able to now refine that? Or was it more difficult to refine that once you started to look at some of these forms, like, oh boy, now I can't manufacture, I got a dialogue, condition for this particular part, or I have to have a slide here, or when you started to think, or did you not even approach that portion of the manufacturing and you kind of had it?
I guess that's the subjects that we had there were more conceptual. So it was, for example, we did a project for PictureTel about video conferencing, like the stuff before Skype. Mm-hmm. And so that was really conceptual in the sense that we didn't even talk about products. It was about the system and the experience of people working together, collaborating over distance, and what they would see on screen, and if someone started talking, then the camera would zoom in on this person, for example. Or it was, so there wasn't really much physical about these concepts that we talked about and developed. And so only in the end we had to communicate our concepts. We actually made a little movie, and we had some props in the movie and some animation. And so that's the point where it got more physical. But even then we just used some props, and we never got to the stage of talking about manufacturing and feasibility. So at Art Center, no, I didn't have, I didn't encounter that phase of the design process.
Okay. What were some of the troubles or the struggles that you'd had, and even professionally, some of the struggles that you've had working as a professional in the design field, and how did you overcome those? Over the years, I've encountered so many challenges on different aspects of, like you say, in school, but also as a teacher. Maybe next is my profession. When I actually started at working at some design firms. So I started worked at a couple of design firms, and then in Chicago. What I noted that the main challenges were always communication, and usually with the client. So. And this has various purposes, but I guess the main one is to work as efficient as possible. So to not waste any effort on the wrong direction, or it's very easy to misinterpret the brief. And this is something I really had to learn over the years, and I'm still learning, because a client is not trained in briefing. And some of the clients I've met are even like startups, or they're not part of a bigger organization, but they just have an idea. So for them to articulate their needs and even understand industrial design and how to brief a designer is very difficult. So it really was a challenge for me to understand what a client really needs, and to keep asking questions and really listen to what they say. And still, even though I listen very carefully and I write everything down and give them feedback on what they say, I still sometimes find that I didn't fully understand, or they didn't express everything they needed to express, or there is a mismatch between what I understood and what they said. And so I guess that's the biggest challenge. And what I learned from that is to, even though I tried to do that, is to document everything even better. Right.
And what I find is that if you visualize that, if you somehow capture it in some sort of sketch, like a schematic or some infographic kind of way, it becomes much easier to talk about, and for them to understand, oh no, this is not what I meant something different. And so I try and make everything visual now, and communicate using visual means. We're thinking.
Right. I think that even sometimes clients themselves don't know what they want.
Right.
Right. I think that's also part of the challenge, is that they themselves are not quite sure what the right solution is, because the brief is intended to get things going, and there's certain core fundamental things that they want. As far as the end result, they end up also relying on what they're seeing and how the project is progressing, and it sometimes changes their own. It changes their original intent. Like, maybe that's not what I really wanted, right? And they go back and they have to revise. their own briefs, like, well, I was thinking about this, and I'm not really sure what I want. You see that a lot in the in conceptual designs with the entertainment industry. Talking to a lot of my friends, they always say that people who work in the movie industry and they want all these crazy creatures, they always say, I want something really completely different that no one's ever seen before, and at the end of the day they want the same thing. They go back with something familiar because familiar is what sells, right? In the movies and things. So it is definitely a challenge, for sure. Okay, so after your experiences at work, you've come back to the Netherlands and you've started to teach. Let's jump into your project, your main project, which is SKETCHDRIVE. What motivated you to create this tool that people can now use to be able to engage with students and be able to provide feedback? How did that whole, just talk about SKETCHDRIVE. What is it? And how is it helping you and other people engage with students?
All right, I'll be glad to talk about that. It's what keeps me busy these days. So what is SKETCHDRIVE? That's very simple. It is a visual feedback tool for design education. And it was really developed out of frustration. And it developed over time. So it's not like I woke up one day and I had this fantastic idea and then ran off to make it and build it. But it really was a process of a number of experiences that led to the moment that I said, hey, maybe this is a tool that I can build and that more people than just me are interested in using. And I guess that after maybe 5-6 years of teaching, that I started to see this pattern of students coming into my class. They would be engaged in the class, and then after class was over, they would walk out the door, and I would really start to get the feeling that the engagement was over the moment they left the classroom. And it only picked up again like the night before class. And I remember as a student the same thing. You look in your calendar, you see, oh, I have sketching class tomorrow. I have 10 pages to do, and okay, let's get started. And you pull an all-nighter, and then the next day you bring it to class. So the problem with that is that you teach something in that class, you do a demo, you give them theoretical support to understand what they're doing, and then they walk out of the class, and in class they still go, yeah, I understand, this is clear. And they walk out, and a week later they try to reproduce what you have told them or what you demoed. And I find, in the results that I got, I noted that students find it very difficult to remember what was told a week ago, and to remember the subtleties and the details of the techniques or the skill that was the subject of that week. So I was really frustrated with the fact that I was really feeling engagement in the class, and people were getting motivated and enthusiastic, and but the classes were always very short. It was like 1.5 hours, and then it was over already. So there's only so much you can do in class. So the students were really alone in the sense that they had to produce most of the work outside of the class at home. Mm-hmm. And I felt that I couldn't reach them there. So that was one of the frustrations. The other one is that often I would only see the results after the deadline. So the class had ended, like 8 weeks of teaching had ended, and then they would produce most of the work and would bind it into a portfolio and hand it in, and I would have these stacks of portfolios that I would have to go through, and then I found myself marking up some of the drawings, like correcting the perspectives and writing something about the line weight or whatever.
Right.
And but it occurred to me that it was really a waste of time, because these students, they would pick up their reports and would only look at the grade, and they say, cool, I passed, or damn, I didn't pass. But they would never really open the book again and look at the comments that I made. And so it really felt like I was giving them feedback at the wrong time in their learning. It wasn't helpful at that point, because they had already done the exercises. So I was really desperate for a way to give them feedback during their learning process. So this was another trigger that started the thinking about developing this tool. And then the third one was probably when I visited my friend in Bogota in Colombia. He's also teaching there at one of the universities, and he had all his students create blogs, personal blogs of their projects. And I'd never seen that before. This was 10 years ago. And so his students were logging their whole creative process in a blog, and he could, at home or wherever he was, he could follow what they were doing and comment on and give feedback on their thoughts or their process. So I thought this was very interesting, and I started experimenting with blogs in my class as well. So I had my students open blogs for all their sketches, and this was already very practical or insightful, I should say, because now I could actually see, and it was also very confronting, because now I could actually see that people walk out the classroom, like they don't log into their blog until the next day before class, and then I'd see a spike in like the people online uploading their work. So what I already imagined was now visible in the statistics of the blogs. But it also gave me an opportunity to give feedback. But what I found is that giving feedback on visual work, on sketches, is very difficult if you can just use text. So these blogs had these comment boxes, so you could type in your comments, and I was typing comments like, well, the first sketch on the right has the wrong vanishing point because it should, and
very hard to describe. It needs to be visual.
So what I sometimes did is I pulled the image from the blog, put it in Photoshop, just drew the right vanishing point on top, and then bring it to the next class to show it to the student. So this was like a series of events that piled up in my head, and kind of all these little hunches combined and formed the idea that later became SKETCHDRIVE.
You think that that process, that, it's one thing to be able to teach the fundamentals because you've already got it down and they're learning, they're watching you. But do you find that this part of the SKETCHDRIVE is much more crucial in having things stick in the student's head, in memory, right? Because now you're marking up their drawing, right? Because when you see something that's already perfect, it's really hard to judge because you're not perfect yet. You haven't reached that point. But do you find now that it's really you've got like a measurable something that can be measured, where they can actually progress maybe faster because they're getting some updates on their drawing, on what's been done right, and that kind of has a much bigger impact in their brain activity to say, okay, I see. I didn't see it here before when he demonstrated it, but I see it because it's on my drawing.
Yeah, no, very much. And this is also something I'd like to do in class as well. I walk around and give everyone individual feedback, and one of the things that I had to learn as a teacher is that it was okay to draw on their work, and for students this is also something they have to learn, that they're very protective of their work, and it's students often still see drawing, and they call it drawing, as an art form, and the drawing that you make is a piece of art, and it's your work, and no one else can touch it, because then it's no longer your work. And so it really helps, I think, to just sit down, take their drawing and mark it up and say, well, this line works better if you draw it like this. And at first it scares them a little bit, or they're in shock that you draw over their drawing. But in the end, it does make them aware that they're not making a drawing, they're developing ideas and communicating their ideas. And
correct. It's not a piece of artwork.
Exactly. So this is, I think, I found this very instrumental in delivering this learning experience. And the same is true on SKETCHDRIVE, even though it's not physically on your sketch and it's still like a layer on that sketch, right. But it still feels like someone's drawing over your drawing, and it's very direct, and it sticks. And I think you have a point there. It really, if you see an example from someone else, you can say, well, I see how he did that, I understand it, but when you try it yourself, it's a whole different game, and
right.
And you need a lot of help during that process of learning how to do that. And if you get that help directly on your sketch, and someone points out, this is where you need to pay attention or adjust this part of your drawing, it goes a lot faster.
Right.
It's much more effective.
What's been the feedback from the students using SKETCHDRIVE now that you've been how long have you, well, first of all, how long has it taken you to create this project in the first place?
Well, if we don't take the thinking and the experience that I talked about in account, that went before the kickoff, I started in 2014 when I talked about SKETCHDRIVE with Martijn, my co-founder and good friend. And we talked about how a tool like this would be able to capture the process, and it would be great to give visual feedback to our students, because he's also a teacher. He teaches architecture. And so, yeah, that's now 2 years ago, or 2.5 years almost. But you asked me two questions, because how long did it take you to develop? Well, we're still developing, and it's never done. This is an ongoing process. But we did develop the first, what you call MVP.
Minimum viable product, yeah.
Exactly. We developed that in just like 3 months over the summer of 2014. And just in time to get started in September when the courses started again.
Excellent.
And we started using it in our own classrooms and using it to support the learning of our own students. And that was interesting, because that's your other question, is what was the feedback the students gave you? And we had expected them to comment on the fact that they would get personal, individual feedback on their drawings and how that would improve their learning experience, which it did. But the most heard comment was actually that they found it so insightful to be able to see what all the other students were doing, and
that's what I wanted to get into.
And get inspired, and learn from each other. So that was a kind of unexpected. And now that we work with SKETCHDRIVE, it's obvious, or it's one of the key benefits that we sell to teachers and educational institutes. But back then we didn't really think that had such an impact, that it would have such an impact that people will be able to see each other's work. It was more about the feedback and the fact that it was visual.
With cost of education that's kind of skyrocketing, especially within private art schools like Art Center and CCS, Lawrence Tech, you've got so many of these schools that are getting really expensive. How do you think the internet now has changed design education, or just education in general? Now you're creating a tool, right? Because you're trying to bridge a gap between, at least for your class, right? Because you're teaching now. But how do you think these tools can probably help other people now? And what impact do you think that's going to have on education as a whole?
Well, I think in general, online education is going to take a huge flight and is going to replace on one hand, replace some of the traditional institutions or institutes, I should say. Well, you see two things happening basically. You see online education being like picking up and becoming more and more important, where people anywhere in the world can sign up for a course, like on Udemy or on Skillshare or any of these platforms.
Sure.
At low cost and terrific skills this is very interesting, but usually they're not part of a curriculum, so it's really just isolated skills, and you can cherry pick your own set of skills, which is great. But if you want to be part of, if you would like to really take part in a program that was built to train you as a professional designer, I think it still makes sense to be part of a program that is a curriculum, that is a set of skills and critical thinking and in an order that was set up for you to learn in the best possible way. So I think that still has validity. So the traditional schools will never be fully replaced, or never say never, but I think it will take a long time before that system is dispensable. But at the same time, you see at these, like what you might call traditional institutes, even though they're not that traditional, but like the physical institutes, you see that they start to use technology as well to enhance classrooms, the flipped classroom, blended learning, all those upcoming technologies. We see that more and more.
Yeah, I was wondering whether they were. I think that's probably going to be a likelihood scenario, is that they are going to have to start blending technology and maybe look at college from remote locations where people don't have to. You still have to pay for tuition, but perhaps the tuition is not going to be as much because you don't physically have to be there. But they find that the tools that are going to be used will supplement the education at least well enough that people can still remain engaged from wherever their location or where they're at. So I think it's some pretty exciting times, and I think this is kind of like the start, or not the start. It's been starting. I mean, it's been in progress for quite some time, but I think with all the tools that are being created out there of modular-based learning, started with Khan Academy, right? There's a lot of things that started with Khan Academy, which is all free education. Is being able to utilize a sort of format that people can follow. And then it just requires the self-discipline, and that's basically what school is about. Is you go to school to have that discipline, force you into that disciplined learning, and ramifications of not learning by not getting the grades, the GPA, to those measurables, standards, in order for you to get a job and to be a productive professional in the future. Very, very interesting. Well, let's just last couple questions here. How do you stay motivated? What are the things that you do to stay engaged yourself as a professional and constantly keep learning?
That's a tricky question, because since I founded SKETCHDRIVE, which was over 2 years ago now, this has been like the only thing
consuming you.
It feels like I don't do anything else anymore than develop SKETCHDRIVE. But in that sense, it is a complete new experience, and it is a fantastic adventure, because not only are we developing a product, which at first I approached it as a product designer, and so we're going to design and build this product. And it's a digital product, but we can still approach it in a very similar way as we design products. So in that sense, Martin and I both approached it as designers, but soon we realized, well, we need more than just a product. We need to get it out there and market it and sell it, and we need funding to develop it. We need developers to build it because we can't program, and so it very soon hit us that we needed more than just our own design skills to make SKETCHDRIVE a success. And so my learning experience is actually the whole building a company out of SKETCHDRIVE and partnering with others to make that happen. And so it sounds a bit boring maybe that everything evolves around SKETCHDRIVE, but that's really what my learning experience and what's keeping me fresh. Everything, almost every day is new. It's like today I'm being interviewed by you. I rarely get interviewed, and so this is a really new experience for me, and I learn a lot from talking to you. And so everything in the last 2 years seems to be new, and in that sense a learning experience. And before that, I'm based in a building with a lot of artists.
Mm-hmm.
So this is like a building with a lot of architects and designers, but also mainly artists and dancers and musicians. And I really enjoy being surrounded by these people with
Sure.
very open mindset and artistic expression everywhere. And so that really motivates me and inspires me. And then I have a 3-year-old daughter who's also developing rapidly and starting to draw. And without me interfering too much, I'm just observing how she is learning to draw, and that is very inspirational as well. Really enjoy watching her pick up a pencil and starting to draw.
Yeah, I have a 5 and an 8-year-old, and it's the same thing. You know, the imaginations that they have when they're drawing their dinosaurs or their Legos or superheroes. It's pretty amazing, just just that level of creativity that they have and things that they have inside of their head that they're putting down on paper.
Exactly. Yeah.
It is inspirational because as
For my
adults,
daughter, it's not even she doesn't think in dinosaurs and objects yet. It's just like random scribbles, but she has a whole story that she tells when she's doing it. And then we went here and to the beach, and it started to rain. There's the dog, and then the end result is like complete chaos of lines. To her,
it's harmony. Yeah, it's a story. So you did touch upon this. So what is your ultimate goal with SKETCHDRIVE? What are the things that you want to do to further refine it and to get it out there? What is your ultimate vision? You did mention that you wanted to get it out there, you wanted to sell it, you wanted people to utilize it. In what way? What is that vision that you have?
Well, the vision is that it basically comes down to that I have these frustrations, and I figured, and I talked a lot with Martin about this. If we feel these, because he had the same frustration, if we have these frustrations, we must not be alone. There must be, I don't know, there must be hundreds, at least thousands of people, teachers that have these same frustrations and that could benefit from this tool. So it sounds maybe a bit idealistic, but I think you need to be a bit idealistic to develop something like this and to bring it to the market. But I do hope that SKETCHDRIVE will help to bring education, especially designer creative education, to the next level. And like we talked about before with the physical institutes and the limitations of physical institutes, and then the spin-off of online education.
Yeah.
I hope that SKETCHDRIVE can, in both these domains, can be a valuable addition and and yeah, bring value to the teaching experience and the learning experience of people, people wanting to acquire a skill and people that have a skill to give, or to people like myself who feel the urge to teach people. And so the big goal is that as many educators as possible, especially in the creative field, will start using SKETCHDRIVE and benefit from it, and see that they can actually engage their students, and they can give visual feedback, which is much more direct than feedback in words, and that people start to experience the value and not really see the tool anymore, but just use the tool as people would use the telephone, or a car. Like that becomes a natural part of their process. And, so that's one thing that we also are very cautious about when developing the tool, that we really try and keep it as simple as possible. And like for every feature that we think of, and we always debate, should this feature really be added to the features we already have, and if we do add it, can we take another feature out to keep it simple again? Because it is so easy. They call that the feature creep in software development. It's so easy to end up with too many features and a cluttered screen with all these tools that allow you to customize everying. And
sure.
The result is that like anyone new to the tool will be
confused.
Confused and find it difficult to
not know where to start.
Yeah. So this is a huge challenge for us, to keep it simple and keep it intuitive and practical. So I guess that's what we're aiming for in the future.
Well, I have to say this has really been exciting. I really enjoyed this whole conversation and where you're headed with SKETCHDRIVE, and just really just getting your insights as a whole. And I really appreciate learning a lot about your background and how you kind of got started. And it's just amazing to see a lot of the similarities between backgrounds as designers, how we got started, and we all have those same struggles and things that we want to overcome, things that we want to improve about ourselves. And I think that this is really a phenomenal start. I mean, it's not just a start, it's something that you've been continuously doing and trying to improve. And I think that creating a tool like this is going to be a game changer. I think it's a great way to kind of get in there and start now, and just preparing for the future, and seeing how we can even utilize this tool for universities and any other institutions that are going to need to implement something to engage with the students. So I think it's really terrific, and it's really exciting to kind of be in there early, learning about it and understanding the vision. So I really appreciate it, Martin. I think this has been a really insightful interview, and we learned a lot. I learned a lot from you, definitely today, having this conversation.
I learned a lot from you too. And I've been enjoying this talk very much.
Oh yeah, me too. I mean, and this is what it's all about. It's really about educating other people and getting other people to understand where things, how we can improve their lives and how we can make people's lives easier, whether that is from a product perspective or just being more effective teachers. And I think that, we talked about this before. I think we have a duty, as professionals to help educate other people and bring other people's level a little bit higher in pursuing, whether that is convincing them to pursue a degree in design, or whether convincing them just to pursue something creative in the arts, whether they just want to practice and be creative and start sketching. I think this tool will help utilize and help people across the board with anything. So it doesn't even have to be sketching, mathematics, all these, there's so many opportunities.
Yeah, who knows?
Yeah, And that's something that you're going to discover.
Yeah, definitely.
So once again, I really appreciate it. Would love to have you back on for further conversations.
Sure.
Definitely when Martin is back, we can have another discussion about other issues that are kind of surrounding the design niche.
I'm sure he'll be happy to talk about his profession as an architect and also his teaching in architecture. So
absolutely,
give him a call and he'll be happy to talk to you about that.
All right. Well, thank you very much. Again, I appreciate your time, and we will definitely keep in touch and see you next time on Driven to Draw.
Thank you very much.
That's a wrap on Driven to Draw. Just a couple things before you go. One, if you enjoyed this episode and found it useful, let me know your thoughts and provide me some feedback on iTunes. Just click on the link below on the show notes. I would sincerely appreciate it. It would mean so much to me. The second thing is remember that I do believe in you. You can be creative if you set your mind to it. All you need to do is just try. Just creating a sketch every single day, spending 10-15 minutes a day, you're going to see your skills grow exponentially. Take that action and try to create that sketch every single day. Peace out. I'll see you folks next time on Driven to Draw. Have a good one.